Now see.
Forget it was a tough series. Both clubs riding each other, doing everything to get each other's goat.
A Time with Art.
Welcome to A Time with Art. Today we have Todd Brown with us, and almost everyone in Cedar City knows Todd Brown, right?
Almost.
We're going to go back and talk about your beginnings and a little bit about, you've been involved in athletics. Your dad was involved in athletics as a huge supporter. And I remember when Scott Brown came to Cedar City and started teaming with his brother David in the clinic that's not even there anymore.
No, it's over.
So Todd, welcome to the show, and I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
But we have a lot of history, and we both know a lot of Cedar City history because you were born pretty much here. No, you weren't born here.
I was born here. You
when
mentioned my
they
dad
came?
moving back. I was
That
born.
was after that. Huh?
I think my oldest sister Lisa was born here as well.
Okay.
And so they would have moved back in around 73 is when they came back to work in the clinic that is now where the green show is. I always like to tell people the two big trees that kind of sit in the green show area were on the edge of the parking lot of the clinic. So they left a little bit of that history there, so I can always make that identification with the landmark of where the clinic used to be.
That reminds me of a story. We used to live around the corner on College Ave in the basement of the Matheson's house.
Yeah.
And one day, Vicki, something happened, and our oldest daughter, Mikey, she's like now what, 50 something? Anyway, she had somehow the iron had dropped and hit her head, and she got some blood everywhere. And Vicki just picked her up and ran her on the block, right into the Brown Clinic. My baby. Because when you cut your head, man, it bleeds forever.
It's a bleeder.
Well, let's go back and trace your history then.
Okay.
So you were born here actually in
Yes.
73?
A few years later, 75.
75. Okay. So, yeah, that's great. And I remember in 73, sitting in the Browns office waiting for an appointment, and I was preparing for the Cedar City Judge Memorial semifinal basketball game.
Okay.
And they lost, and Judge played Dixie, and Judge won the championship. And the next year, Cedar lost to Morgan in Provo.
Yeah.
And then the next year, we won the championship.
There you go.
Well, anyway, those are going back. But I know that in the athletic department, you've been able to really make pretty much a lifetime career so far out of this.
I have. I would like to hope it could be a lifetime career. Athletics is still athletics, and sometimes transitions happen and things aren't there. And but I'll stay here as long as they want me here, and I'll keep pushing for us to be better as long as I can push for us to be better.
And where did you go to school? In Northern California?
No, so I did undergraduate was here at Southern Utah University in athletic training, and then I went to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio for my master's in athletic training, and then I transitioned and worked at the University of Pacific was my first job. Worked there for 4 years and hung out in Stockton, had great mentors there. Someone who I still think fondly of and has really put out a number of phenomenal athletic trainers through their athletic training program there. Chris Pond, Cache Valley kid out of Logan,
Right.
Ended up there. It's been his only job, but he has built a program there that has brought some really good athletic trainers, people that are highly respected in the community and do good things. So had probably one of the best opportunities there to just learn from someone who is seasoned and was really just a great mentor and made lots of great connections, even in the small 4 years that I worked at Pacific.
I remember we saw you at a game. I think we were playing up there.
Yeah, I came out to a number of games once I moved
Mary's?
out there. I came to St. Mary's.
Okay.
I believe I went to a Sacramento State game, and actually I think I brought a student with me on one of them because we didn't have football at Pacific, and they wanted some football experience. So I'm like, we'll just come up and help out. And I think I brought a student to one of those games. But
that's probably true. Yeah. And those must have been the days when Ricky was there.
It was. In fact, Ricky was the interim athletic director, I believe, when we played St. Mary's. So I ended up in the car with him, and he pulled up, and we were trying to talk our way in for parking. And that may have been the last year that St. Mary's had football, too, wasn't it? Around that same time?
Remember when the Great West started, they were scheduled to be one of the teams. And the week before the season started, they canceled football.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that was around in 2003 or something like that.
That would have been about
And
right.
it really hurt the schedules, and so some of the teams had to double up and try to figure out who to play and how that was going to go.
Similar to what happened when we transitioned to the WAC.
Yeah, we did. And now we're going back to the big
We're
sky.
going back to the big sky, yes.
So tell me what you think about that.
I'm excited.
Me too.
We're making some good connections again. The conference staff has stayed pretty much the same, and so that's been nice and refreshing to be able to connect with them. They are a great conference. Their history is deep. They're rooted in some deep history, and that's always refreshing to be a part of something like that and to be involved in that type of environment where there is a lot of tradition. There are a lot of rivalries, and we'll renew some rivalries as well as bring a rival. Well, our football coach doesn't think it's a rivalry yet, but bring a competitor that is closely related to us in, I guess, geography. Yeah, in distance.
Well, I remember, I think I was in the 8th grade when SU was College of Southern Utah and played the last game in St. George against Dixie.
Yeah.
And Daryl Monahan was the quarterback, and it was 6-0 for us. And the rain had been raining the whole game. And in fact, the bus slid off the road, the old Highway 91. So,
wow.
Anyway, Bruce Osborne, who lived across the street from where I did, has told me that story a number of times. But Monahan ran back into the end zone and down the ball for a safety, made it 6-2, and then we basically free kicked to them, and our defense held. And he figured they're not going to be able to score because we've held them.
Yeah.
And we won 6-2, and we got the axe. And that's the last time.
Maybe when the bus slid off on the way back, that's where it disappeared. Is that?
I was going to say, after that, nobody knew where the axe was. And then something like that surfaced right before that 2009 game.
I think some people had some historical, what do you call them?
Relics?
Relics. Not relics, because I don't know that they're the official axes, but I think there were some replicas that were made of that, and that was kind of what resurfaced. And who knows if any of them were the historical one. But that, yeah, we did. There were some pictures, some different things, and then when we started playing them again in football, there was a newly made one that's really heavy. It's not really an axe, but it's.
Yeah, and well, Cleo Petty was the baseball and basketball coach back then, and Neil Petty played for him.
Yep.
And a kid named Dean Conant was one of the better players. This was early 60s, but we'll talk more about that later. But let's get back to your history. So after your father moved here, they had the business. David had it going, and so, but those two were beneficiaries of athletics at times, right?
They were both supporters of it and always wanted to give back. I think that's kind of something that they've always felt they wanted to do, is help the community in ways that they can help the community. And I remember specifically in a high school, and this will maybe put it in the frame of mind, as a kid, saw often there would just be people that would show up at our house and unload a load of wood. I'd be like, what's going on? And my dad would just say, hey, they weren't able to pay for their medical bills, so we worked out something that they could do. Bartering back then was still something that people did quite often. And I remember asking my dad a little bit later on, or talking about it, and his response was, should I do medicine, not do medicine? And he kind of said, if I had it all over to do again, I don't know that I would go down the path, because it's become something that it never was. I went into this to help people. And that kind of stuck with me. I thought, well, that's interesting. So none of us really pursued the medical career other than my younger sister. But she's in that mindset too, that she's doing it to help people. And there are some things that are strange with how we've developed in the paperwork and the things they need to do. But medicine is still medicine, and it's about helping people. And she's very excellent at that. She's really carried on kind of his philosophy of it's about taking care of people.
And where is she now?
She is a breast cancer surgeon up at Huntsman.
Oh, okay.
So we can get into that if you want to, because kind of how, we came back to Cedar City on a little bit of a whim. We weren't planning to do it. It happened quick. We came here on vacation to visit family. Sean Spivak in the athletic department mentioned that there was a position open in athletics, and a few things happened, and we get back to Stockton. And at that time, my wife was expecting, and we just found the news that the pregnancy had terminated itself. You know, we went into here, you can see the progress, and there's no heartbeat, and so you have kind of that distraught aspect, and we're just sitting there, and I pulled up the job postings at internet. It happened at this time. Pulled up the job postings. I see one for an athletic trainer.
Yeah.
And I looked at my wife. I said, "Well, that athletic trainer position's open again because it had been opened every year." And she said, "Well, how much does it pay?" And I told her, and she didn't laugh this time. And I said, "Well, is that a
something we can do?
A clue?" And she said, "Maybe it's time." And so picked up the phone, called Ricky Mendini, and within 2 weeks, she'd had a job at the school district to come back and teach. And I'd had the job to come back as an athletic trainer. And not sure really why those promptings were there, but a few years later, my wife did develop breast cancer. And the benefit in all of that is that at that time, my sister was just finishing her residency. She'd come back and gone to medical school at the University of Utah and had finished up her residency in breast cancer surgery. And what a great, asset to have at that time where everything's difficult. So
that's a great story. I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah, it was a blessing to just have her there as a resource and to get us. And at that time, she's like, "Hey, I know what support services are there in Cedar, and I love Cedar City, but this field is progressing, and they're not to where we're at yet. And you absolutely need to get up here for your surgeries and the things that you need to do." And so it was really good to have her be there as an advocate for my wife, going through such a difficult time, and just knowing that there is someone here that I fully trust that will give me information that is in my best interest and not just because that's what they want to do. So.
Well, and that's a great story. And we were in Australia together.
Yep.
Back in 2009 or 10, right in there. 2009, I think.
I'm trying to think. Was it? Yeah, that may have been pre. That may have been just right after Jordan was born. Yep.
Yeah, and it was before she got the cancer. So, yeah, and I remember we walked around the area where we were staying.
We were the Browns and the Chalices.
We walked somehow through the parking lot, and there was a movie theater.
That's right. Watched Batman, I think. Wasn't it one of the Batman movies in Australia?
Yeah, that's right. And then we went to Magnetic Island. Was that what it was called?
It was. Yep.
And they had those little
little cars,
go-kart-like cars.
And that's the only time I drove on the wrong side of the road and sat in the wrong side to drive. Kept hitting the blinker when I wanted to turn the windshield. It was a few things were reversed, but yes, we were out there because Damon Heyer, former basketball player for us, his parents lived out on Magnetic Island. So when we were up in Townsend, we hopped on the ferry and just went over and spent the day in Magnetic Island.
And remember, we were riding along in that little go-kart or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there she was at a coffee shop.
Yes.
On Main Street, and we stopped and talked to her. And then she came with us and showed us a lot of, that was a fun trip.
Yes, I give my wife a hard time about that aspect because I asked her to put sunscreen on and she missed a small patch on my back out on Magnetic Island. I was burnt to a crisp just right in that one spot that she missed the entire rest of the trip.
And Damon became a pretty good player for Southern Utah.
Yes. And he went over and I think played quite a bit. Yeah. I think did he make it to the NBL over there? Can't remember if he did. I thought he had been picked up.
I thought he did too. And we had another player who had a whole career in Australia that was years before. And anyway, he keeps in touch with me. But his name has slipped my mind right now, but I'll remember it.
We've got another one over there right now. Played for us for a few years and then followed Coach Simon to Bowling Green. But Jason Spurgeon's over there playing a lot of basketball in Australia right now.
Well, it's nice for some of these players that like Sean McVeigh, who was with Southern Utah back when Bill Evans was here, and was a great center for us. We put him in the Hall of Fame a few years ago. And as I remember, he couldn't come. So I interviewed him at the Hall of Fame banquet. Remember that?
No.
And it was on
a video.
A video, yeah. And because it was in Germany at the time, so he played a lot of basketball there. Well, so you became trainer or helped with, but now you've risen to what? Associate athletic director?
Deputy athletic director for internal operations. Yep. Athletics loves their titles, so that's deputy's not one you hear too often in structures, but it is in the world of athletics, and usually that just means there's the athletic director, and then you can have associate athletic directors, but you can also have a deputy, which would be
a little higher. Yep. That's great. So they relied on you to know all the rules.
For a while,
And
that
how
was
did
my
you,
job.
How did you learn all that?
Oh, that was
In school, or was
no,
it just
no.
you had to read a book that thick?
Yeah, Ken Beezer kind of took a chance on me and let me have a chance, which I'm grateful for, to make the transition out of athletic training over into administration. But I really attribute that to the conference we were in at the time in the Summit League. At that time, Mindy K. Larson was over compliance, but was just transitioning out, and they'd hired a new compliance person in the conference office. And I always remember his first name is Greg. I can't remember his last name right now. But he was great. He loved it so much. I would just call him and he would just feed me everything and how to look at things and really help structure me in understanding compliance and how it works. And I attribute his ability to teach me a lot to what I know about compliance and how to figure things out. And through that, then you just start making connections. And that's the one thing I like about compliance versus the others, is that they work. It was learn on the job, but compliance people are always willing to help other compliance people. If you don't know or you're trying to figure something out, you have contacts at other schools and call and say, hey, have you ever seen this? Have you ever this? Or hey, our coaches brought this to our attention. We know you're not out there just breaking the rules. So how did you get to that? And then they walk you through the process, and then so it helps. And that's what I like about compliance, is they're always willing to help each other out. It's not like I got you or I want to hold you accountable. And
so over the years, how has that changed? There are always things coming up.
There is. The rules change.
Yeah.
And it's still funny. Like last night, I got a text from one of our coaches saying, hey, can I do this? And I'm like, I'm not as involved in all of that as I used to be. And I don't want to give you an answer because I can't remember specifically what it is. Just make sure you talk to Christy, who is now our senior compliance officer. Just check with her tomorrow and make sure that what you're about to do is still okay.
Yeah. Well, and the Summit League was an interesting thing because it was Tom Duple who renamed it from the Mid-Continent Conference.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and obviously you remember that. Well, let's go back and trace your baseball career.
My baseball career, it didn't go past Little League hard. It's not that hard to trace.
You didn't? Did you play senior league?
I did not. I probably wished I would have, but it really was just T-ball and Little League. And I remember entering high school and just thinking, maybe a summer without baseball would be nice. And for whatever reason, that kind of started me down the path of just, I didn't play baseball after that.
Well, talk about, you were on a team that I coached.
Yes, you were.
Carter Brothers?
I was. Carter Brothers.
Carter Brothers, second baseman.
Yep, we played. And there was a chance you guys put us in a rotation too later on where I would catch for 3 innings, because back then it was about innings pitched. So the rotation was I caught for Robbie. Oh no, I caught for Sean. I caught for your son.
Right.
And Robbie would play shortstop, and we'd do the first 3 innings, and then Sean would go to catcher, and I'd go to shortstop, and Robbie would go to pitcher. Yep, I remember that. I also remember, I got my name in the newspaper for hitting a grand slam. I think it was our only home run that year, and I remember the game. It was the old furniture place in town, down on Main Street, Ashdowns. What was the name of the?
Lay Furniture.
Lay Furniture, was that it? Maybe there was.
It was just off Main Street.
Yeah.
It's now where
I'm trying to remember. I think that's the team. I know it was against Sean Spivak.
Antone's Interiors.
There you go, Antone's Interiors. That's got to be it. We were playing against Sean Spivak's team, and it's kind of an interesting game. I remember a few things. I got catcher's interference against Sean. He hit my glove, and now Sean and I work together and have offices next to each other. But Sean Spivak hit my glove. He got catcher's interference. He slid into me hard, but I just remember hitting a grand slam, and that's all that mattered. We won the game.
Yeah. And
back then, you got in the newspaper for that.
So you didn't go on in the 13-year-old?
No.
Because at that time, we were playing Kanab and Enterprise and Parowan, and a couple of Cedar teams. Who'd you play T-ball for?
Oh, that one I don't even remember.
Because
I just remember
Larry Reese and Wayne Clark, now Manzione, but he coached with them.
It might have been one of them.
They were, you might have been on that team because they won almost every game. And the team I had, we were Antone's Interiors, I think, then. And then Sean was on there, and we had Shakespeare in center field and Robbie Sherritt. And so then when I first coached, what was it? IGA was the
IGA. My first team was 7-Up, and then
7 Up.
7-Up didn't sponsor a team, and I thought it was a joke.
And
I
that's
was
how you got your
mad
car to
because I'm
run.
like, the very next year I had to go try out again, and I was upset that I had to try out 2 years in a row, because back then, once you were on a team, it was you were on that team, and the coach could develop you all the way through.
Well, I got my first pick with Robbie Sherritt in the
Yeah.
draft when Sean and he were 9-year-olds.
Because you got Sean for free.
Yeah, and Sean I already had. So I took Robbie. And then we had Benji Morrell,
Yep.
who
Remember Benji?
had an accident
Yep.
up the canyon and passed away. So sad. And I know his parents are still here at Cedar. But yeah, and those guys, I think we only lost 2 games in 2 years. And guess who, too?
Antones? Or
No. Clark and
Oh.
I don't think it was Clark and Linford, but Sounds Easy, I think, was their team.
It sounds easy because it is.
The video, remember the video stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, but anyway, Hodson was the recreation director of that.
That's
Steve
right, he
Hodson,
was.
He was, yeah.
He'd
In the
taken
hot
that pause.
seat, Yeah.
Yep. I remember that. And during that time, I also remember Susie Pedersen giving me
Yeah.
tennis lessons during
Did
the
she?
summer rec stuff. She laughed.
Wow.
She's like, I never played tennis. I'm like, well, you didn't act like you didn't. As a kid going to tennis lessons, I thought you knew everything about tennis.
Well, she did a lot of things. And
Yep.
Catherine Berg, what do you remember about Catherine?
Most of my memories about Catherine really just have to do with the after part. For whatever reason, she was probably involved in a lot of things I did as a kid, and I just didn't realize it. But my knowledge and understanding of Catherine really became once I came back and started working here. As a student, a little bit. When I was an athletic training student, there was a little bit of working and knowing who Catherine was, but it really came about just seeing the history and the things that she built and all the things she'd done to make Southern Utah University athletics what it is. And that's really
Right.
kind of the first time understanding Catherine and seeing, even in the filing cabinet that I still had in compliance, still had some old Catherine Berg notes and some different things that were along there. But definitely a pioneer
She
for
was,
athletics.
and then she left here and went back up to Wasatch or
Yep.
up in that area. And we named the softball facility after her.
Yep.
At one point.
We did.
And now you're doing a new one.
We were building a new one. Apparently,
Supposed to be
there's supposed to
ready.
be a big thing coming in today. We're waiting for the big beams that are going to go across the top of the dugout. We've been waiting for those for a while, but they should be here today and hopefully getting installed tomorrow and Friday. And it's getting close to making that a wrap up on that project.
Well, that's where the baseball field.
It is.
And
We slightly shifted the angle of home plate and
Yeah.
right field and left field a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
that's the old baseball footprint.
2012 was the last baseball game.
It was.
You probably know a lot of the history of baseball because it was here and then it wasn't, then it was here and then it wasn't.
Yep.
And then in 2012 was our last game.
It was. And do you remember we were all back here puckering because we were 2 outs away from winning the Summit League championship that year. And the plan was, as soon as that last out happens or as soon as we know they're eliminated, that the field was just going to be demolished. Some of that, I think, came from when you leave facilities up and don't do anything with them, they just get vandalized, and we didn't want that to really happen. So it was kind of, let's just make sure.
Well, yeah, the backstop and all that came down on Monday.
It was down before the team
after
got back.
the South Dakota State game.
Yep.
And that was, 19-12, I think. But there were so many runs scored, and
There
they
were.
couldn't even keep it away.
Because we were 2 out, like I say, we were 2 outs away from winning it, and we
then
couldn't get the 2 outs done.
Yeah, so that was a good time. Although there's still people in town trying to figure out how to bring baseball back. And from your point of view in athletics, you know all about that and all of the different things that would have to happen for that to happen. Besides having the money to do it, you have to have balance, right?
Yes,
With
and
the
so I
Title
think you
IX.
touched on some of the main things. There's a number of things that make baseball very hard for us. And now going back into the Big Sky, it
Then they don't have
makes it harder. It's not a sponsored sport, and that was, you talked about the transition. That was probably the hardest part in looking at why baseball was there. Is one, we were sponsoring a lot of sports, 17 sports
Yeah.
for a school that doesn't have a large budget is hard to do. So we were sponsoring 17 sports. We're transferring into the Big Sky, and at that time the Big Sky required that men's tennis was a core sport. So we had to bring in men's tennis, and that's hard to do if you're going to bring in a male sport and not back it with a female sport. So that was a hit against baseball on why baseball started. Can we really hang on with baseball? And at that time there wasn't this huge conference shifting and realignments and the things that were going on. And from the conversations I'd had, with the athletic director at the time. There wasn't a conference that wanted us as an affiliate. And
Yeah, I
playing
remember
an independent schedule in baseball
wasn't
would
gonna
be
work.
absolutely brutal, because all of your games before people start conference play, you're fine. But once conference play starts, who are you going to play? And if they're going to play you, it's going to be a middle of the week game, or may not even get a game at all. And so that became a very difficult aspect of just scheduling all the things that would have to happen with that. And ultimately, the decision was made that
We
best
had issues
decision
like that too before, when BYU and Utah would play us in the middle of the
Yep.
week, because they had end of a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday games, and
Yep. So they'd play some people who don't get to play
Yeah.
a lot on these midweek games with us, and but that would become difficult. The other aspect that makes it hard too, and we face this with softball, is that baseball starts early. Softball starts early, and we still get snow
February,
in
yeah.
February and March, and that becomes a very difficult thing to do. So you would be almost like that Lincoln football team that we played that doesn't have a home football schedule a few years ago, D2 team that all they do is travel
They
around
just
and
go
play.
everywhere, yeah.
Yep, just play a full schedule. We're on the road all
try
the
to
time.
figure out how they can get enough money to find a conference. And,
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So that'd be
Well,
difficult.
for those who don't know, we're talking with Todd Brown of SUU Athletics. And better put that in there again so people might know who we're visiting with today. But let's go back and talk a little bit more about your family. And we talked about your wife and how's she doing now with that?
She's doing great.
good.
Once you get past your 5 years of your last treatment, they basically consider you cancer-free. So that's where she's at now, thriving and still trying to make sure all our kids get through. And that's, our son. So she had our youngest 8, 9 months before she found out she had cancer.
Uh-huh.
And so he's now going to turn 14 this year. So that's kind of the timeline with which it's there. And she's been able to be there. And, you think about this community and what this community means and why we stay and why we've been here. And there are some very kind of specific things that sometimes happen in your life. And you look at people, and we were at the time living in the same ward as Carolyn Hinton and Wayne Hinton.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically, man, she's a saint, and she's no longer with us anymore, but Carolyn Hinton just coming up and saying, I'm praying for you specifically, because no kid should be able to go through this life without their mother. They need their mother. And I look at just that and all the things that the people did and just rallied around us. And man, it's Cedar City. That's what it is. It's who we are. And
That's
it's
true.
wonderful.
So that was at the Rock Church,
The Old Rock Church.
First
Yep.
Ward. Yeah.
Well, it was the 12th
The
ward
12th,
then. But
Now but they only have 2 wards in that building.
only 2 wards
still.
there now. And, they did some alignments for those of you who don't understand church history and the way they work, and they want to get away from the numbered wards. So the concession was they went, and there's a stone actually on the front of the building that says, the Rock Church erected on this date, and it says
1931.
Cedar First Ward, but the word first is spelled out F-I-R-S-T. So we were able to keep First Ward in there, but it's F-I-R-S-T. It's not the number.
That's true. And that is an iconic building.
Yep.
Guys came during the war, or just after one of the wars. The CBs, is that what they were called? Something
It
like
was.
that.
It would have been, I think that building was, the first house we bought was built in 36 over on the east side of town. And they had a little kind of plaque there on when it was built. And I think the Rock Church was like 34. I'd have to go look at the stone that's out there. 31. But
I've seen it on the stone.
yeah.
Well, but my granddaughter and her husband, and now she has 3 kids, and she lives in that First Ward.
Yep.
And the 12th Ward also goes there, I guess. But they've done a lot of different realignment in all of Cedar City. So I grew up in what was called the 7th Ward. And then later when Vicki and I moved to 580 West there, right by South Elementary where she taught school, then they, after we moved on Ridge Road, they got rid of the 7th Ward totally, which is kind of sad for history, because there are history buffs that go back to when the 7th Ward and 9th Ward chapel was built by those people in probably the 6th and 7th wards, because back then
You're going to
the
have
building
money.
fund, that was.
Were the other Browns in the 7th Ward as well? Did that split South Elementary? I'm trying to remember what ward they were in because I remember the
Yeah,
building. It's now where the
David was in the 7th.
yeah,
ward,
it's now
he
where
and his
the
family. Yeah.
the new housing complex is down by the tennis courts.
Yeah. So things are changing.
Yep.
All around. And if you don't know, Cedar City has grown a lot, and the university is up to some number in the teens, right?
Yep.
Thousands. So she said in the beginning meeting at SUU, 16,000 students.
Yep. Enrollment.
It's probably down a little bit in the spring semester.
Yeah. It sometimes is. I haven't seen the numbers yet. I think what do we wait for the 3rd week report, and that kind of gives us the numbers of enrollment and where things are at. But I would expect it to stay pretty flat. I don't know that it would decrease any. A lot of it is online, I think.
Yeah.
But
Well, a lot of the students,
face-to-face is larger than we've ever had it too.
Oh yeah, and you know by the cars that are here. As an example, when I came to this 10 o'clock meeting with you today,
You didn't find a place
I
to
had to
park?
drive around for like 20 minutes to find a park. I went all the way over past the buildings on the north side, and then I came back, and the parking lot that they just opened with the new business building.
The old parking lot that they took offline.
A guy in an orange truck pulled out, so I pulled in.
Oh, you got lucky. I just know if I'm here by 8, I'm
going
gonna have parking. If I leave anytime
That's
during the
right.
day, it's a shot in the dark as to whether or not I'll be able to park again.
Right, and I thought 9 o'clock would be just great, But I think at one point, when I worked at the newspaper, which was the Daily News when they first, I was the editor when we went daily in 1978 and 79. But I remember going to St. George, and I think your mother worked for the newspaper. Or maybe it was
My
your
grandmother,
wasn't it?
my mom's mom. Yes, my
Yeah.
grandmother worked there. Emily Gillens.
Yeah.
She was a big newspaper, and even when she didn't work at the newspaper, she was still typing stuff to send
Stories.
into them all the time about stuff they needed to do. Or
Yeah.
I love my grandma. We've got some great stories we can tell about grandma, but she was very proud and wanted to make sure that her kids always got the recognition and grandkids.
And I got to know her because we would go lay out the paper. I'd go drive from Cedar to St. George, and the head of it was an old missionary companion of mine. John Rogers was the publisher, and so he hired me to do Cedar City, and we used to go around and deliver the papers. There were like 4 of us in the office, and if our paper boys weren't doing it, we had to go do it. Anyway.
Yep.
Those
No,
are
thanks.
days past.
That's interesting. I'd forgot that my grandma worked at the newspaper. Most
So
of my
tell me-
memories about her are really just kind of post-retirement age.
Right.
And so bringing that back, I'm like, that's right.
Well, she was
did
still
work.
working. And
Yep, she was.
Yeah, but I know she was older. I'm not sure.
And loved typing. I mean,
She
everything
did.
was typed out.
Well,
We'd
she
get
had
little.
to typeset the paper. That's
Yes.
one of the things
Was
she
it?
did. Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can write that in your journal.
I will. I'll have to tell my mom. You got to go record
Yeah.
this part of this podcast to make
So
sure we
did
talk
your
about
mom,
history.
Penny, right?
Mhm.
Did she ever work with the papers at all? Or?
No, she. So when they came back, funny things about newspapers. When she came back and they had kids, so I'll get their story, where they were at mixed up. But my dad worked, did medical school at the University of Utah,
Oh.
and then went out and he worked at UC Davis, I think was where his residency was. And then he had another place in there too, but that was during the Vietnam War. And so with the draft and the other things that were going on, he actually got pulled into the Navy, and so they ended up he ended up at Long Beach working out of a naval base in the hospital there. So my oldest sister, Stacy, was born while they were still in medical school at Salt Lake. And then my oldest sister, Sherry, might have been born in Ventura. I believe she was Ventura or Sacramento, and then my older brother, Ryan, was either the vice versa. I don't remember all their timeline. But we were just down there. We took my mom on vacation with us this summer and ended up in that area. And she said, I want to go back by the old house. And she got us right to their old house in Ventura. And I was impressed. And she kind of remembered lots of things like, I used to always take Stacy on this walk, the kids, and we'd go down around, here's the park with the ducks, and we'd go down there and feed them. So my mom had started school at the University of Utah. That's how she met my dad, but then stopped school. And then once my youngest sister, Cindy, started kindergarten, my mom came back to school here at Southern SUSC at the time and went through and graduated and earned her teaching degree and went back and started teaching school at that time.
I remember that, yeah.
There was a newspaper article about her coming back, and as a kid, you think that's cool. My mom's in the newspaper, and that was back when they had graduation up on the upper quad, I remember being there and
Yeah,
attending her graduation.
and then the weather would, depend on the weather, because
Yep.
it was pre the Centrum,
Yep.
which is now the AFEC, the American First America. Anyway, yeah, and they would have those up there. And I remember Neil Maxwell came and spoke at the baccalaureate the night before the graduation.
Interesting.
And that was kind of a highlight back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, those are days. So you graduated from Cedar High.
Cedar High School graduate. There wasn't an option to choose another high
There was
school
no
when I was a
canyon,
kid. There was
yeah,
only
man.
one. Yep, 93, class of 93. Graduated there and came here for a year on a music scholarship. People laugh when I tell them that. I'm like, yeah, I actually came here on a music scholarship. And then we, served my church mission and then came back, finished the first year I was back, met my wife, met Robin. We got married and both finished school here. And then
So you met her here
Yep.
at school.
Yeah.
Cool.
in band.
In band. Where was she from?
She's from St. George.
Okay.
So she was a Dixie
Yeah, I
High
remember
grad
that
who
now.
she
Yeah.
always says, I always thought Cedar was just full of hicks and cowboys. And I'm like, okay, that's
Well, she was probably right back in the day. I imagine it was kind of tough for your mom and dad when they first got here to try to build up a clientele too with David and
I'm not sure the
Prestwich
clientele
had
aspect.
retired and
yeah,
Farnsworth wasn't there.
I'm
anymore.
not there with a lot of that. I do remember, and they still talk about it, that their first house that they had coming back was the Spivak house right next to South Elementary.
Yeah.
They refer to that often, and my older siblings have lots of memories about what it was like to live in that house.
And right by the.
And that was
That's right. You can-
that was a time when banks weren't doing loans very much, and the house that my parents built, which is still there, and this is the house I was raised in, that my dad was able to put some things together and get some people to give some loans and do some things. And I remember that part of the struggle of just trying to say, how do I build a house and how do I build that and keep things here? And
Was that 300 or 400?
300.
300 east.
300 East.
Yeah. I remember that.
It was. The house is still there. Prior to my dad's passing, he had a health. He'd fallen and broken his hip and wasn't as mobile, and we'd got them to finally realize that maybe your house, because it's split level with the basement, there's not lots of stairs,
many
but
stairs,
to
yeah.
utilize the house, you got to get through some stairs. And so they were actually to the point where we'd finally convinced my dad that maybe it's time to move, and they'd gone out, picked out a lot, picked out the plans. They were going to go in one of the Levitz communities and had just have a house built, and they were kind of excited. And then my dad passed away, and one of those things where it was just kind of, well, Mom, you can do that, but there's no memories in that house.
Yeah.
And are you ready for that? So she did the other option, which was to remodel her kitchen, and is in love with the house now and has fun with it. But she was a trooper. She couldn't do it with my dad. There was no way he was going to live in the closet for 6 months while that remodel happened. But she was a trooper. She just stuck in their
All the
bedroom.
way around
and,
her, right?
Yep, just moved in there. She'd eat microwaved hot dogs out of the bath. We had kind of a little area back there where some sinks were. She's thriving and still doing well and still comes and supports games. We had
That's
her this
great.
last week. She came to the women's basketball game on Thursday, gymnastics on Friday. She still comes out and supports.
So when you got to SUU, then eventually you were the trainer. and
First
you
came back as
traveled.
yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
you traveled a lot after.
For the first 2 years I came back, my sport assignment was with women's basketball.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, Steve Hodson was the head coach, so I came back and worked with Steve. After that first year was when we're out at football double days, and Ricky comes out from a staff meeting, and this almost might be exactly how he said it. Hey, if you know of anyone who loves athletics, has a degree, and is a quick learner, let him know, because Ken's looking for someone for compliance. And I looked at him and I said, is that a hint, Ricky? He said, well, not really, but it is more money than you make. I said, and a lot less travel. So I sent off an email to Ken. We had a few meetings, and within about 4 or 5 days, Ken had offered me the opportunity to take over. So I stayed that second year trying to do the compliance aspect in addition to traveling with women's basketball. And it became very apparent that it's going to be a struggle to do both and to do it effectively. And so at the end of that year, I had transitioned out. It was Ann Westwood's senior year, another Cedar City player that we've had through the years.
Oh yeah, she was a great one. And didn't she marry Hyatt?
Higby.
Higby.
Yep.
Sorry.
Another basketball player for us.
Yeah, he was.
Here in town.
And I remember going to UNLV on December the 31st and playing UNLV down there. And Higby and I were trying to finish the reading that was assigned that year. And so the only 2 lights on the bus were mine and his.
Everyone else was.
So that's a memory. But I have a memory of you and your dad in Fargo, North Dakota, when he went with us and you were there. We went, Vicki and I had lunch with you too.
Did I
Do you
get him to
remember
Fargo?
that?
I remember getting him to South Dakota State.
Well, maybe it was at South Dakota
Not South
State
Dakota
in
State, South
Brookings.
Dakota. We were at South Dakota. I think that's the trip I had him on. I'm trying to remember. I
pretty
remember
much-
getting him on a trip, but I remember us being in
Well, Sioux Falls.
Falls.
We probably were in Sioux Falls, and then we would drive to South Dakota, and South Dakota
And we went up to
State.
South Dakota. We played South Dakota. I think it
Yeah.
was in the Dome that year.
Yeah.
And that was pre their entrance into the Summit League. But I think that's the trip I ended up getting him on. I'm going to have to go back and refresh my memory on that. But yeah, may have been.
Do the top of the hour and introduce that.
Okay.
Do it right now.
All right. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what you're doing and where you are in the athletic department. Because I know you continue to rise through the ranks. It's been really good for you, I think.
Yep.
And your family.
We are. And it's, we can talk forever about this. I don't know how much time we have. We're good.
Well, we can continue for what, another 5 minutes?
No, you can go. We were at the top of the hour. I just mentioned 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
SU.
KSUU,
Yeah,
Cedar
yeah.
City.
there you go. That's
Yeah.
got it done. That's probably a voice people are familiar
We
with.
can go back to KSUU, and it was KCDR FM.
That's-
And I was, in 1967 was my first semester, actually quarter here at SUU.
Yep.
CSU then. Actually, maybe it was Southern Utah University then, I don't know. No, Southern Utah State College.
There you go.
And Don Blanchard and Ken Mumford put together the radio station with Frayne Pearson, who was the communication department chair at the time. And it was up at that old bottom of that parking lot up on the hill across from Thorley. And there was a little building there, and that's where the radio station was.
Yep.
And then they moved it over to the old museum on the other side before they built the building that's there now for the dance studio and all that.
Wow.
But I did the first newscast on there that we went on the air. But I think it was only 1,000 watts. And so it wouldn't get much out of Cedar City. And on the other side of the hill, you couldn't get
Couldn't
it.
get anything.
Yeah, and so, and then we did sports. So I did baseball, taking reel-to-reel tapes on big tape recorders. We don't even have one in here now. But we would carry the recorder down there, put the reel-to-reel on, and I would call the game. And then I had runners between the studio and there. They would take it up, start it a half an hour later, and then we did that 3 or 4
Wow.
times to do the games. And those were the days of Tex Anthony when he played baseball.
Yeah.
Some of those, but that was before your time. But you remember Corey Hibby? Was he and Sean
Yes.
were pretty good friends?
The judges,
Yeah.
my current boss's kid. Yes, I do, and it's not always fun because he knows exactly how old I am.
Well, yeah.
and his wife Carolyn has reminded us of that. If comes in and with Corey and where the age is, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel that old. Last night it was funny. I went to pick up a prescription
Uh-huh.
at Walmart. Milan DeMille is a pharmacist there who was
Oh, yeah.
also class of '93. And the girl asked me for my date of birth, and I told her, and she thought I said 25, and I said, no, I'm not going on 101. I'm only halfway there. I said, and so is Milan. She laughed. She's like, I know she told me that, but I don't believe her either. Like, you're not 50.
Well, I go into Bullock's and do my prescriptions,
Yeah.
and they always say, and what's your date of birth? I look around to see who's there, and I go, 9/17/48. And they look at me like, how are you still alive?
like coming in here and getting it. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, that's, I ended up out at Walmart to get our prescriptions because of diabetic. They tell you where you can go to get your insulin, and that's one of the places we can do. But I that's good support because it does support Cedar people as well.
Mhm.
But Bullock's has been a great supporting asset for us as well through athletics and continues to do that. And I like to give as much as I can to them. So I'm kind of a split person right now on where I go for things. My durable medical stuff and some of my others ends up there, and my insulin is through
Yeah,
Walmart
it's
right now.
Yeah, and there's Walgreens, and
Walgreens and a lot of them. I remember
Lynn's even has a pharmacy.
we can go all the way back. I don't know why, but I remember that there was the pharmacy on the corner of 100 and Center that became the Little Caesars. and now it's the outdoor rec, or there's some type of outdoor rec building there. But I remember those days. I remember Cali Drug, walking through there on the
Cedar
old
Drug
wood stuff.
right
Yep.
on Main Street.
Yeah, all the old wood floor that would creak as you'd walk through. And
Hunter Cowan, you remember?
I remember Hunter Cowan well. Well, Hunter Cowan still did the wedding registry back when we got married.
Yeah,
And
they did it for years.
it was one of those that after we had everything, we had some leftover, and I was trying to convince my wife, can I just use that to buy a gun? Because they had the outdoor aspect as well. I didn't
they
win.
did that
I
a
didn't
lot.
win that argument. I didn't get to use some of our wedding registry money on a gun.
And
so.
then they started the car paint business.
Yep.
You know, all the paint they had, and
Yeah.
they could match your car, and you could patch it up. If
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, got game. So what about NIL? Can we talk about that?
We
And
can talk about
how
NIL.
involved
What do
are
you
in
want to
that?
talk about it?
SU,
And
I know that a lot of people don't know all of the aspects of it, but it's probably a thing that has been coming on for a lot of years because schools were getting accused of paying players and all of that thing. So now that's the mode, right?
it is. I kind of laugh and go back in my brain to when we really kind of lost control of some of the things, and the NCAA was a little bit of a different thing. I think there was always this feeling that schools our size wanted to say we want to make everything as equal as we can so that we have a chance. And the reality became that you can't keep telling the people that have the money to be able to do things what they can and can't do with that money. And for me, that really came down. There was the big debate a long time ago about fruits, nuts, and bagels. This is probably compliance stuff for you. When I first started, really all you could do for kids was anything to do with a scholarship. That's what they were allowed. You couldn't, if they're on a scholarship, great, then they can get money for meals. But if they're not on scholarship, they don't get anything unless you're traveling, and now you can provide them with things that they would need on the road for food, and they can be compensated for that time. But a non-scholarship person, other than those things from athletics, they got nothing. So then it was like, well, how do we start helping and getting a little bit more? And so this legislation crept in that you could give fruits, nuts, and bagels at any time, and that wasn't impermissible. And then it became, well, who wants to eat a dry bagel? So we were legislating whether you could put spread on the bagel. And this whole kind of thing just started to transition, and that's where you had the Power Fives at that time be like, we're tired. We know that we don't have the voting numbers, and that anything that we want to do with money, you guys can vote down. And we can't live in that anymore. We are hearing from our kids. We're feeling this pressure of, look at all the money they're making and they can't do this for me. So they were feeling pressure that we weren't feeling, and that's where those divisions kind of started to happen. And it even came down, I remember being at one meeting once, and the compliance person from West Virginia just shouted out, feed the kids, you know. And now you can feed anyone who's participating. You can do meals incidental to participation. But I think that started us down this path. And because we were so reluctant to want to start to provide some of the things that really now just make sense that we probably should have been doing, that we lost the narrative. And there's been this continual push of, well, you need to be doing more. And so here we are. We're now here at saying, okay, well, what do? Share revenue. Well, how do we share revenue, and what does that look like? And that's really what the House settlement was about. So we said we got to be in. And there's things I like about it. As you know through the history here, it's difficult to build facilities for athletics in Cedar City. Gratefully, we've got some things that are moving right now, and President Benson's been very supportive of pushing and saying these things need to get done. So we've got a number of projects that will be done. The counties come in and wanted to help out too through some work and some things that are there. You know, John Oglesby, in order through the summer games, they want to do more events in our arena, but that's our main practice facility for men's and women's basketball and volleyball. Plus we have gymnastics events there. So it's really hard to uproot them and then put them in, right now, our multi-purpose gym and expect them to have effective practices. But in order to free that up, we need a better practice facility. And so John can bring more events in now through the summer games aspects into the arena, and the county has given us money to do a real refresh and make the multi-purpose, our men's and women's basketball and volleyball main practice facility. So that's their daily use facility, which will allow us to bring a lot more events into the America First Event Center. So with that, those things are hard to do, right? They take a lot of money and they're hard to do. Revenue share is something I think we can find a way to be competitive in a much quicker aspect than trying to go through the entire difficult process of building a facility and getting really these grandiose facilities that people are working for. Do we have to get there? Absolutely. But I think name, image, and likeness, revenue sharing aspects will allow us ways to get some kids here that maybe we wouldn't have been able to get before. and can help us build that foundation with which then we get to go back in and really grab and start to push for the upgrades to facilities that we'll ultimately need to stay competitive.
Well, I know when Todd Simon left, some of his players left.
Yep.
And one of them we played against because he went to Utah Valley, the starting point guard.
He stayed, yeah, he left and he went to Utah State, and then he ended up this past year back at Utah Valley.
Utah Valley,
Yep.
yeah. And so there's more movement too.
Yep.
But so does that make it more difficult to keep players once they start to blossom?
It can be.
We're probably not
History's going to
into
tell
it.
us where we're going to get to. We're only into it for a few years, but even
Yeah.
today in some of the news we read, the NCAA conventions going on, President Baker talked about this year in the NCAA portal specific to men's football that we had a 23% decrease in the number of people that went in the portal this year in that time frame. There's a number of reasons for that. All of them we may not fully know now. Some of that is with the name, image, likeness, and the revenue share is now there's roster restrictions. So there's not as many spots available, and sometimes people are seeing that if I take this jump, what I think people are always going to be in my ear. Agents right now are running the show with college athletics, and that's hard. We've got to get that figured out, because an agent can go and talk to you and say, well, I can get you X amount. Well, I can sit there and sell you on, I can get you 6 figures. You know, I'm hearing some things with your stats, I can get you 6 figures. So you're like, sweet, I'm in the portal. Well, then you go in the portal, and now it's this debate of, well, you could, but maybe we're looking at this person and we'll get you as a backup. So people are losing opportunities because there's no commitment. Before I go into the portal, I just don't know. But until I get in the portal, that's the only way I'll know. And with those roster restrictions, I believe student athletes are starting to realize there's that aspect that I may not end up getting picked up anywhere. And I may not end up in any better situation than I am now. And not only that, but the academic aspect is still a part of it. And you know, if you transfer later on, I don't know a single institution in this country that is not going to require you to complete at least 25% of your degree at the awarding institution. So that puts people, as they get closer and later on, closer to graduation, in a difficult spot as well. So we'll see how it works. But I do think in order to build, and you know, in talking with our men's basketball coach, Coach Cedar, he's expressed this, and I think football has seen this. You see it with women's basketball right now. They're successful right now because they've had some retention of some really good athletes. Mm-hmm. And so how can you keep those athletes here and not wanting them to test the waters? What is it that you can do and just say, hey, if you don't even get in there, this is what we can do.
Takes more money, or
takes more money.
Or more trades.
Yep. It takes more money, and it takes them believing in what's going on. And in some situations, sometimes loyalty isn't a thing right now. One thing we knew going into this, and my biggest concern, you talked about the Hall of Fame earlier, is how do you start selecting Hall of Fame athletes at our level if people aren't willing to stay? And at some point, I think we'll start to have this realization that not everyone's going to end up in the NBA, not everyone's going to end up in the NFL. Well, this still is maybe the highest level you're ever going to compete in, so why not stick around and do something that you can bring your kids back to and say, hey, when I was here, this is what I accomplished. What do you get to take your kids to if you're at 4 different schools? Which one do you go to? Hey, at this school, this is, you know, where's your loyalty? Where's kind of your push and your fan base and your history?
Let's go on a university tour and show you where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. All the way back in the 70s when Stan Jack was the basketball coach, he won games. I think 4 times he won 20 games. We only got to the national tournament once in '77. He used to talk to me and say, Art, if I just had one more guy, one more scholarship, we could get from 3rd and 2nd to maybe 1st in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference or the old RMAC.
I love coaches because that's their mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, is trying to truly take that, because we're having some conversations with coaches too, because now you don't have scholarship restrictions anymore for anyone who's on your roster. If they can fit within your roster restrictions, you can have them on scholarship. So I think track is men's track. Let's talk about that. It's a great example of what the House settlement has done, and how do we adjust to that. So prior to House settlement, track, you could have an unlimited roster. There was no limit on the number of student athletes you could have, but you were only allowed 12 points, the equivalent of 12.6 full scholarships. That's all you got to give out.
So you had to divide them up.
So you had to divide them up and give them any. Well, now tracks have moved to, it's 45. You can have 45 people on your roster, but guess what you can do? You can put every single one of those 45s on a full scholarship. So now how do we compete with that in track in this day and age? when some schools will make that investment and put that in. And so I think some sports are easy to look at. Sports where it's like that, you can easily say, hey, maybe we should start looking at the scholarship aspect that makes sense for this institution, as long as that person is already proving that they're meeting individual metrics. And some of the other sports, it's a little bit of a risk. A team sport, you don't know how they're going to mesh with someone. You don't know what the actual transition of that is going to be. So it's a little more subjective or objective in your process rather than subjective, where you could really dial in on some things with track. Golf would be an easy one. Can they go play golf? Can they shoot a score? Yeah, they can. Okay, well, that's worthy of a scholarship.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things.
How many golf scholarships are there now?
Golf is limited to, oh shoot, because you asked me.
Sorry.
Men's golf was around 4.5 before. Women's golf was 5 or 6, but now I believe the roster limit is 9 or 10. So you can have more scholarship there. All of our sports had a little bit of a flux. Some had to cut back a little. Our gymnastics roster was a little bit higher than it was. Football was a little bit higher. Men's and women's basketball were close to that number. They weren't as difficult. Volleyball kind of was. But tracks, footballs, some of those, and gymnastics, that time we'd had a bigger roster, did need to trim down the number of student athletes we had.
And I think the shift from the WAC now into the Big Sky, which programs will that benefit the most, do you think?
All of them,
Okay.
except for gymnastics, because that's really the only sport that
And
will not be in the
yeah.
conference anymore. In the same conference as all the other sports, but that's always been true of gymnastics. We've never been in a conference that actually has gymnastics as a sponsored sport. So they've always had to be an affiliate member or a member of a different conference, like they are right now, the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation. And then moving, when they go into the Pac-12, they'll even be an affiliate member, because 3 of the 4 schools will be Pac-12 schools, and we're the affiliate to make them there. So in gymnastics, it's a little different because there's only 60 gymnastics teams in the country, or between 60 and 70. You don't need as many gymnastics teams to sponsor it in your conference. You only need 4. So that's why the Pac-12 said, hey, we can sponsor it as a sport, but we still need 1 more team, and who should that be? And Scott Bauman's put us in a great position to where they said that's our best option right there.
Because we always do so well.
Because we do well,
With the
academically we're
athletes we've
sound.
got.
You know,
Yeah.
going through that process, they want to know everything. They want to know how much money are you putting into the program. We just don't want to bring something in. We want to make sure that it's a level that's comparable to what we're doing.
Continue.
You know, how are your academics? Which a good thing is that that's a priority for Coach Bauman, so it wasn't difficult to sell him on that. Hey, you might look at us like a lower level institution, but these are phenomenal students, and it is a program that is sound academically, sound, you know, financially. I think we put them in a good spot where they can be competitive, and then that the coaching is there and our facilities are great. So
I've always had a lot of gymnasts in my classes, but
have you ever
great
failed
students. No, never.
There you go.
I mean, I'm not sure we ever had one that didn't get an A.
I would say that too. I remember,
You know, they just are great students.
there was one that used to teach a graduate level course. I'm teaching one again, but they took my course, and I think I gave them a 98 as their final or on a paper, and they had told someone that was the lowest grade I ever got in school. And I'm like, well, what? They act like it wasn't like I was pretty clear on what I wanted, and I didn't feel that would, but yeah, somehow I was the worst. I was a mean professor because I gave them their lowest grade ever. I'm like, it's an A. You gotta.
Well, anything between 94 and 100 is.
But
really
apparently, like the
good.
98% or the 96, they were upset because it was the lowest grade they ever got. And I was just like, okay.
And
Didn't
speaking of
realize that.
scholarships, some of the students have to maintain that grade point. Puts a lot of pressure on students to
Does.
have a certain grade point to keep a scholarship.
Yep.
And I remember when Jack Bishop was the football coach, he had to divide the scholarships that he had up. And then I know when we played, I can't remember what the number was, but when they forced us to go FCS to stay in the NCAA deal.
Yep.
And so that was in 93, and 92, we almost made the Division II playoffs. We tied Idaho State here, and that tie cost us going to the Division II playoff, according to the coaches.
Yeah.
And then in 93, we went FCS, and now we have the 93 deal up there on the football stadium.
Yeah.
I told people a lot. I said, we won the conference that year. We were 3-8, but we won the conference. We were 3-1.
You said the quiet part out loud. That's
And we didn't talk about that. But remember, were you at the game when UC Davis came here and their quarterback? We beat them here, and that's how we won that league because we were 3-1, and they lost to somebody else, and we were tied 3-1, but we beat them
because of that game. I remember when they used to bring the entire marching band with them. They'd load up in buses and bring their marching band and put on a halftime performance.
Your dad could have told you about that going up there at UC Davis because that's big there. And when we would play after the game, they were still playing when I got done with the post game.
Yeah, they'd go out there and just keep
on the broadcast, and they're out there performing, and there are people in the stands watching the band. So our band is moving.
Our band is great. The people that put that vision together, the president's cabinet, all the people, I would probably miss some of the names, but at that time I think it was Provost Mendini, who is now it wasn't Provost, it might have been the department chair. She really had a vision, came in, pitched an idea, and I think it's been phenomenal. What they've been able to put together and the way they've done that has probably one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever seen in something like that, and that's impressive. And the people that put that whole thing together, and David Torres, they need to be commended for the way that they've approached that and gone forward.
Because
right now our marching band, it's loud, they play well, they understand it, and they love performing, and it's great. And
they show up at different events and do that.
They do.
We were on our way to Fort Lewis and Durango, Colorado one year, and I was listening with my radio. You could get radio stations in and out because there was no satellite then. And I remember they were doing a pregame show for Fort Lewis's the Raiders. They were anyway. He said at the end of the broadcast, he said, "Coach," he said, "the team's ready. Is the band ready?" You bet the band's ready. And I thought that was the funniest question I ever heard a sportscaster ask a coach.
Yeah.
And he must have had something to do with the band too. Yep. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Yes. But now for our conclusion, we want to talk about NAU.
Okay.
You brought that up earlier.
I did.
We got on the air.
It's the funny story that I love to tell people about Art Chalice and his memory and his brain. And this goes back to, it would have been sometime in the early 90s. A great friend of mine that I grew up across the street from, Chris Heap, and I, we were out in Three Peaks. He had a little red Chevy Love that we were driving around in hunting rabbits, and we were listening to the SU football game at the time. And we're just sitting there driving around, and all of a sudden I hear Art, the voice of the birds, start to say something like, "So-and-so's down on the 40 or whatever yard line it is, and he's tossing his cookies." And and I was like, what in the world? So I said that in my mind.
They called him Alpo.
Alpo. So whoever it was. So years later, I go on my mission, come back, and I'm taking Communication 101, the speech class, I think is what it was from you, Art. And we're there, and it was the interview aspect where everyone had to interview someone. And it came to me, I was the last person selected to do an interview, but we were odd numbers, so every student had already been interviewed. Yeah. And the class kind of goaded me and said, "Well, interview Art." So we sat up there, and I still remember asking you the question. I said, "Art, you said something on this radio broadcast that I will never forget," and I started to tell the story, and you did the same thing. You're like, "Oh yeah, that was so," and you knew the name of the player and the situation. I was like, holy cow, this guy remembers so many things that I couldn't.
It was right on the 50-yard line, and he was down there losing his cookies, and the team was over there in the huddle, and the officials were like, "What are we going to do?" And then they had crews out there scrubbing.
Right.
It was a carpet too,
Yeah, with the old turf stuff.
Yeah, they got that early at NAU. One of the funny things about NAU, Todd, before we wrap up, we would drive around the campus, and they had really interesting speed limit signs. 17 miles an hour. and one I remember was, I think, 19, and another place on the campus that might have been 13. And I'm going, well, that's pretty creative. Yeah. So Ricky and I would always kid, "Oh, are we going to drive down this 17-mile-an-hour street?"
Have you ever had Ricky on this show? You guys, it would be like, I was going to say, that'd be like a 3-hour show with you guys talking about all the places you've eaten. What you should put together is a list of, go see if they're still there. If you hit these cities, see if this restaurant's still there, because there were.
There are in Kansas City. You know what? That fire burned it down. The old steakhouse we used to go to, and now they've rebuilt it.
Yeah.
And it's in the same place.
I remember the most disappointed I ever saw Neil Gardner was the first year I think I was here, and we were at the Summit League tournament in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was at was it Union High School? What was the high school that the tournament was played at? But you guys were convinced that there is this steakhouse that we're going to, and it is the best steakhouse. And we get over there, and it was closed down. It was almost like, I don't know if you're a Parks and Rec fan, but it was almost one of those experiences where Neil was just like so mad, and I thought the guy was going to get out of the car and just walk home or do something. But great memories with that, and you guys are great. My other NAU memory, I'm going to share this one,
This is good.
was the year after I graduated. I graduated year before Matt Cannon finished.
Okay.
And we had come home for Thanksgiving because I was at graduate school, and I remember being in our kitchen listening to the football game. And you remember how Matt Cannon's career ended, don't you?
Yeah.
Taken off on a stretcher, and you know, a great, phenomenal athlete, individual person, all of those things.
He didn't play his last
phenomenal.
game.
Yeah,
Charles Henderson came in and replaced him.
Yep, that was the end to his phenomenal athletic career here. But I remember you were the one that was letting me, you know, the voice of the birds. Art Chalice is the one feeding me all the information about what was going on, and you know, that was another Art Chalice radio memory that just sticks in my mind about what was going on.
Tom Bullock used to listen to the games up at his cabin.
Yeah,
he would complain when he couldn't get it when we switched to FM.
Yeah,
and then he had to get a higher tower on his cabin
to be able to pull it through.
And unfortunately, he's passed away. A great guy, and ran the Bullock's drug. Now Evan is doing a great job with that, and his kids
pushing it on to his kids.
So
I have a former student athlete that works there as a pharmacist too. It's now Nicole Ford is one of our golfers is there as a pharmacist working for him.
Well, those are good jobs. My nephew Paul Chalice Jr. is a pharmacist up in Bountiful, and his father worked for the Ogden Standard Examiner, my brother Paul, but he passed away in 2018. So we're getting up there. You're not, but I am.
Oh, I'm getting there. Don't worry, Art. I'm nipping at your heels.
Well, and you know, how many states have you been to?
States?
In America.
Oh, I don't know. I counted once. Over half. I could probably tell you the ones I haven't been to easier than the ones I could tell you that I have been to. But the South is probably the harder part for me. When you get through there. But
well, when C. Ray was here, we used to go to a lot of different places in the South, which helped me.
Yeah.
Because I'd never been to Atlanta. We used to fly into the airport there and then drive to these other places like Troy, Alabama.
I think that's the only way I've been to Atlanta too, is through the airport.
Yeah. And we used to go to Chicago and drive 5 hours to get to Western Illinois. And Jeter could tell you about Western Illinois.
Oh, so I've been to Western Illinois. They were in the Summit League back in the day when I first came here. And, that wasn't an easy place to get to.
When we first got in the Summit League, they played Valpo in the championship game of the Mid-Con Championship.
Yep.
But a lot of those teams were moving from the Mid-Con to the Horizon.
Yep.
And some of them are still there. Yep. So I see like Wright State playing, you know, Youngstown State. And I go, wow, we've been to Youngstown. We played football at Youngstown. Yeah. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing.
I've been to Youngstown just for basketball because when we lived in Ohio, we went up and made the trip, and that was the year that the team won and went all the way. We were living in Ohio at graduate school, and I remember it was quiet. We were sitting there, and they had a player airball a free throw, and I just started yelling, "Their team!" Everyone's looking at me. The kid looks at me and just laughed, and I thought that was just kind of funny that it was quiet enough that he didn't like the airball chant in his own gym.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too.
I have,
Todd Brown
of
the Southern Utah Athletic Department and the Deputy Athletic Director. Excellent. Who knew, right?
Who knew? Our staff doesn't even know. I get introduced as an assistant or an associate athletic director all the time. You're fine.
We could talk Little League baseball, though. Remember, Jim Ross was the coach with us.
Yep, he coached with us.
And he had two of his kids on there.
He did.
He did.
Brian and Mike.
Brian and Mike.
Yep.
Well, anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you, Art. It's been enjoyable.
Great to have you. It's Todd Brown of Southern Utah University. We need to tell people that this broadcast is live on YouTube, and it's also live on KSUU.
Yeah. Tell them to look up your name, and it's underneath that, a time with Art, but it comes under your name, Art Chalice. Arthur Chalice.
Arthur Chalice.
Yeah.
Arthur, Sir Arthur
My
Chalice.
mother-
We should add the
my
Sir in
mother-
front of there just for fun. That just sounds like
My
it fits.
mother had a hard time calling me Art. She always called me Arthur, but then Vicky and her family all call me Arthur. And everybody else calls me Art. But my mother would always say, Arthur Thomas Chalice Jr.
So then you knew you're in trouble.
Okay, well, that'll wrap it up. Thanks again. Maybe we'll
Thank you.
do this again.
All right,
Talk
sounds
about
good.
Other NAU memories.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.